This podcast was produced using artificial intelligence and refined by human editors.
Welcome, journey enthusiasts, to another episode of Travel with Lara and Luca, where today we're transporting you to the historic heart of Greece, the city where democracy was born, Athens.
Oh, Athens, a city that delights the senses and tickles the intellect, where ancient stones whisper secrets of the past, and the sun-kissed Mediterranean laps at a civilization's cradle.
That was poetic, Lara. And speaking of intellect, today's episode is a thrilling odyssey through iconic sites, sumptuous cuisine, and some lesser-known spots in Athens not to be missed.
Indeed, but before we reveal the richness of Athens, let's let our listeners in on a little secret. We don't just want to talk about the stately ruins or the obvious attractions, do we, Luca?
Absolutely not, Lara. You see, friends, we're taking you down the winding paths less trodden, through fragrant markets and past the cafes where the real stories unfold.
Oh, it's all about the mix, the histories, the myths, the laughter in the tavernas, and yes, even the way the old buildings lean in to eavesdrop on our conversations. There's a rhythm to this city, which we're excited to share with you.
A rhythm indeed, and sometimes that rhythm is the beat of an ancient drum echoing from the walls of the Acropolis, and other times it's the modern-day pulse of a city that's simultaneously a canvas of history and a hotbed of culture.
It's a gift, really, how Athens presents itself to us. A montage of moments from grandeur to the delightfully mundane. Each stone, each street, each flavor has a layer of stories, don't they, Luca?
That's right, Lara. And each story will paint a mental picture for our listeners, from the majesty of the Parthenon to the rituals of Greek coffee, to the hidden nooks where contemporary artists leave their mark.
And since we're on personal narratives, Luca, I can't wait to share our Athenian escapades. Remember the goose chase for that elusive vintage bookstore last spring?
How could I forget, Lara? It'll be quite the treat to recount that one and several more tales of our Athenian exploits. Yet it's not all about us. It's the soul of Athens we're eager to unveil.
The soul, indeed. And you know, every time I think of Athens, I remember that first glimpse of the Acropolis, standing proudly, almost defying time. It's a sight that never loses its magic.
It's the kind of magic that's palpable, Lara, whether it's your first time laying eyes on it or your 100th. But let's not give it all away just yet. Our listeners have much to look forward to in this episode.
Oh, the anticipation. We've just about set the stage for our Athenian journey today. We're going to take a deep dive into the iconic sites next, including some thoughts on that very Acropolis and its lasting charm.
Right after that, for the foodies tuning in, we're biting into Athens' delicious cuisine. Picture this, the street corners wafting with the tantalizing aroma of Souvlaki, the buzz of a nearby taverna as glasses clink in celebration.
And then, Luca, will slip away from the bustle to reveal Athens' hidden gems. Those serendipitous discoveries even some locals haven't stumbled upon yet.
Can't wait for that. Plus, we'll guide everyone through the must-see places, sprinkle the conversation with some weird and wonderful facts of this ancient city, and of course, delve into the deep, rich history that's as mesmerizing as the Aegean itself.
Oh, and if our listeners think we're done there, they're in for a surprise. We've got travel tips straight from the pros that will make any journey to Athens as smooth as a fine Greek olive oil.
Not to mention the side excursions. There's a treasure trove of experiences just a short trip from the city. Think sparkling seas, golden sands, and ruins that echo with the tales of oracles and heroes.
Well, Luca, I think we've set the expectations rather high. Let's head straight into the first segment on iconic sites and keep this journey through Athens rolling.
Absolutely, my fellow globetrotter. Join us as we step into the shadows of the great columns and among the whispers of the gods. We're starting with the iconic sites of Athens that you absolutely cannot miss. Well, hello again, fellow travelers. We're back after that intro to dive into some of Athens' most iconic sites.
And what's more iconic than starting at the literal high point of the city? I'm talking none other than the majestic Acropolis.
Ah, the Acropolis. You know, every time I climb up those steps, it feels like I'm walking through the pages of history, like I've just burst into a room and history has frozen mid-conversation.
And it's a bit of a workout too, isn't it? Those steps are no joke. Talk about the stairway to heaven.
Oh, definitely. By the time you reach the top, your legs remind you they exist. But the view from up there, it's as if Athens is laying itself at your feet, just begging to be admired.
Can't argue with that. And let's not forget the centerpiece, the Parthenon. You know, being up there among those colossal marble columns, it's almost like you can hear the whispers of the ancients.
And for those listening, if you want to feel even closer to those ancient conversations, go early in the morning. Less crowd, the light hits the marble just right, and it feels like the city is just waking up with you.
Early bird catches the best light for photos too. But tell our friends about your favorite little spot up there, Luca. The one you always rave about?
Ah, you're talking about the Erectaion. Not as famous as the Parthenon, but it has a unique charm with the Porch of the Caryatids, those 6 statuesque ladies holding up the roof.
Right, the original fierce females. Although, Luca, wasn't it last time when you were trying to mimic their pose and nearly toppled over?
We agreed never to speak of that again, Lara. Moving swiftly on. From the Acropolis, you can actually see down to the ancient Agora, another must-visit.
The heart of ancient Athens, full of markets, politics, and philosophers deep in debate. It's kind of like an ancient version of social media, minus the memes and cat videos.
Imagine if Socrates had Twitter, though. That would be something. But seriously, walking through the Agora really connects you to the day-to-day of ancient Athenians.
It's special, indeed. Hey, didn't you once buy that historically accurate philosopher's robe from a stall around there? Quite the fashion statement.
Historically accurate might be stretching it, but I have indeed robed up in the spirit of Plato. It's all about immersing yourself in the experience, right?
That's definitely one way to do it. You're just missing the sandals to match, and you'd be set for a day in old Athens.
But sandals or no sandals, it's impossible not to feel the layers of history around you. The ancient Agora is literally the birthplace of democracy. You can't get more historic than that.
It's sobering. And to think, right there in the shadow of the Acropolis, decisions that would shape Western civilization took place.
Not to mention, the Agora has some pretty stellar spots for a bite. But let's save that discussion for our next segment, shall we?
Oh, you're absolutely right. And with that little hint, our culinary tour will be up next. But before we jump to the flavors of Athens, let's wrap up with this segment.
Absolutely. And if you ever find yourself in Athens, walking these historic paths, remember that every stone has a story.
And sometimes those stories are best experienced at your own pace. Take your time, breathe it all in, and don't forget to look out for the details many pass by.
Couldn't agree more. Well, that does it for our tour of iconic sites. Make sure to stick around as we tease your taste buds in the next segment where we explore the delectable Greek cuisine.
Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Athens has flavors as rich as its history, and we can't wait to share our favorite dishes and foodie spots.
Grab a snack if you must, because we're heading into a segment filled with the delicious and the delightful. I'm already hungry just thinking about it.
Food enthusiasts unite. That's what's coming up next on Travel with Lara and Luca.
Ah, here we are, in what's possibly my favorite part of every adventure, food. And when it comes to Greek cuisine, Athens is a treasure trove of flavors.
Absolutely, Luca. And you can't talk about Greek food without talking about the two heavy hitters, Souvlaki and Moussaka. The eternal debate, which one rules the Greek cuisine throne?
Oh, it's Souvlaki for me, every single time. That juicy grilled meat, the fresh veggies, that heavenly pita, it's the perfect grab-and-go food.
I see your Souvlaki and raise you a Moussaka. It's the epitome of comfort food. Layers of sautéed eggplant, minced meat, and a creamy bechamel sauce. It's like a hug on a plate.
But Lara, Souvlaki is versatility personified. There's a reason you see those Souvlaki stalls at every corner in Athens. It's the city's heartbeat on a skewer.
I won't argue with you there, but let's save our appetites for another cornerstone of Greek culture, the coffee scene. Athens takes its coffee seriously, and trust me, it's not just about the caffeine.
So true, Greek coffee is an experience, the preparation, the serving, the slow enjoyment. It's a ritual.
And it's not just traditional Greek coffee that's a staple. Frappé has become synonymous with Greek coffee culture. It's like the national beverage of summer.
Yep, since the accidental invention in the 50s, The frappe is a frothy, refreshing concoction that I just can't get enough of. Sit in any cafe in Athens, and you'll see what I mean.
But this is where we part ways yet again, Luca. For me, it's all about the Freddo espresso. Strong, iced. This is one trend I don't mind standing behind.
Freddo espresso drinkers like yourself do seem to walk around with a certain air of cool. I'll give you that. But let's not get coffee nerds dragging us into a debate on cold brew versus cold drip now.
Agreed. You'll win, because you're the true coffee geek. Anyway, while sipping on these delights, it's inevitable that you'll get hungry. And this is where Athens' street food scene presents itself as the hero we all need.
And hero indeed. Let's talk about those hole-in-the-wall places, the tiny bakeries with spinach pies hot out of the oven, those street vendors with their assortments of nuts, and the cheesy bugazza that oozes deliciousness with each bite.
You're making me hungry, Luca. Every time I visit, I make a beeline for koulouri, those sesame bread rings, perfect for on-the-go snacking.
Or how about the less talked about, but just as amazing, loukoumades. Honey-drenched, crispy on the outside, fluffy on the inside. Greek donuts are little bits of heaven.
I'm not one to resist the allure of those syrupy, sticky sweets. Though remember that time you tried to compete with a local on who could eat more?
Yes, let's not relive my defeat. I was ambitious, but greatly underprepared for that culinary battle.
But we can't talk about street food without mentioning the tavernas. These small, often family-run establishments that offer an array of Greek dishes are where the soul of Athens cuisine really comes to life.
The best memories are made around those rickety tables, sharing a mezzi platter, some local olives, tzatziki, dolma, and let's not forget, a carafe of rustic Greek wine.
It's where you can immerse yourself in Greek hospitality, philoxenia as locals call it. They'll treat you like a family, plying you with more food than you can eat, and stories that are as rich as the food.
Exactly. And we can't ignore the catch of the day dishes. The seafood in Athens is something you have to try at least once, or twice, or make that a regular habit.
Just a word of caution to our listeners. Tread carefully. Those tavernas can be dangerously inviting. You might find yourself spending hours there and forgetting about all the historical sites waiting to be explored.
Speaking of exploring, our next segment will take us on a journey to some of Athens' hidden gems. While everyone's lining up to see the Parthenon, we'll uncover the city's sly little secrets that don't make the cover of travel pamphlets.
I can't wait to share some of my favorite spots that are off the beaten path and yet so quintessentially Athenian, where the city whispers its untold stories.
Stories that even the locals might not all know about. So stay with us as we're about to reveal another side of Athens that's just as delectable as its cuisine.
So Luca, Athens is brimming with well-known historical sites, but what about the hidden gems? Those places that are a little off the beaten path, but absolutely enchanting?
Lara, you've hit the nail right on its figurative head. When you weave through the modern bustle of Athens, there's this neighborhood. It's almost suspended in time, Anafiotika, right at the foot of the Acropolis.
Anafiotika. It's like stumbling into a Cycladic island without having to board a ferry, isn't it?
Exactly. With its whitewashed houses, narrow alleys, and vibrant bougainvillea, it's truly a pocket of island serenity in the heart of a frantic metropolis.
And do you remember that cat?
Oh, the philosopher cat. That tabby that seemed to ponder the meaning of life beside that tiny chapel.
Right, I mean, if cats ever started giving out life advice, I'd book an appointment with that one.
And visitors, don't just stick to your maps. Get lost. Trust me, a wrong turn in Anafiotika is the right turn for adventure.
Speaking of getting lost, I think that leads us to my favorite Athenian artisan, the poet sandal maker of Athens.
Stavros Melasinos. His humble workshop is like a treasure trove covered in famous footprints. Figuratively, the Beatles, Jacqueline Kennedy, the list goes on.
He crafts these timeless pieces while dispensing poetry. I bought a pair and he recited a verse about journeying, how fitting for a traveler.
Yes, strolling out with his sandals, you walk with a story. Though I must say, I didn't get poetry with my pair, only a quip on my peculiarly large feet.
It's better than being remembered as the one who haggled over the straps. Luca, I never let you forget that one.
My eternal claim to fame but who wouldn't want a custom fit by the poet himself? Besides, I think my bartering skills are quite charming.
Oh, definitely, in an odd sort of way. They also give a unique glimpse into the Athenian culture. Artisans are a proud cornerstone of this city.
Meanwhile, another hidden gem is often overshadowed by giants like the Acropolis Museum, Athens' smaller, niche museums.
Like the Numismatic Museum, you wouldn't immediately think that a museum about coins would be fascinating, but isn't it just unexpectedly riveting, Luca?
You're literally walking through layers of history, one coin at a time. Plus, the building itself is an antique. It was the home of Heinrich Schliemann, the man who unearthed Troy.
And then there's the Museum of Cycladic Art. Though not exactly hidden, it tends to slip under the radar next to the more colossal exhibits in town.
Cycladic figurines. Their minimalist style feels so modern, don't you think? Like ancient Greeks predicting the future of art.
And their size. Some are so tiny you imagine them carried in the pockets of their owners millennia ago. Tiny talismans.
Exactly. It's in these unassuming places you feel the pulse of history and art that doesn't scream for attention but whispers, "Come closer."
And closer still to these whispers of antiquity, folks, there's a place, a haven, where the trees might share their own stories.
Ah, you must be hinting at the National Garden of Athens for our next segment.
Hush, Luca, we must leave bits of mystery for our paths ahead. For now, let us bask in these hidden nooks that only Athens can cradle in her embrace.
That's true. The city holds on to these gems, hiding them in plain sight for those curious enough to discover them.
That's the spirit of Athens for you, entwining tales of the past with the rhythm of the present.
Right on. And speaking of rhythm, the next segment will surely have the two of us waxing poetic about a place that vibrates with life and history. Wait for it, the National Garden.
Oh, I can already feel the shade of the trees and the scent of orange blossoms. But before we stroll down the garden paths, think of the spaces we've shared today, the poetry amidst leather, the artistry in the small, and wisdom in the walls.
Athens, my friends, is a city layered with narratives, waiting to be read, not just in the grand marbles, but in the cobblestones and corners.
So till our feet lead us to the lush greenery of one of Athens' most beautiful outdoors.
Grab your sandals, poetry optional, and stay curious.
And that, explorers, wraps up our hidden gems of Athens. Now, shall we wander where the orange trees grow, Luca?
After you, Lara. But listeners, stick with us as we step into the oasis amidst the cityscape and uncover more Athens lore in our next segment. All right, we're rolling into segment 4 of our Athenian Odyssey, must-see places. You simply can't leave Athens without visiting these spots.
And first up on our must-see itinerary is the National Garden, an oasis of green right in the heart of this historical city.
Ah, the National Garden. It's like stumbling upon the secret garden of Athens, isn't it? You walk from the concrete jungle into this Eden with the most unexpected variety of plants and trees.
It's quite the experience, especially after a morning spent amongst the relics of antiquity, and then, poof, you're in this calm haven complete with a duck pond, a mini zoo, and even some ancient ruins themselves.
It's a poetic interlude in the midst of our busy sightseeing schedule. I always get this sense of tranquility wandering those paths, almost as if time slows down.
And remember that time we saw the group of elderly locals playing cards under those tall palm trees? It was like we were privy to a hidden slice of Athenian life.
You can catch a glimpse of real Athenian culture there, and it's free. These are the experiences you travel for, authentic, unexpected, and completely charming.
Speaking of high points, we need to talk about Lycabettus Hill. Now, this isn't for the faint of heart, but oh, the view, Luca.
Absolutely, Lara. Climbing Lycabettus Hill is a pilgrimage I recommend to anyone fit for a bit of a hike. And don't you dare let the funicular tempt you. It's about the journey, not just the destination.
Says the man who races up the hill like he's training for the Olympics. But really, once you get to the top, the panorama of Athens spread out before you is, well, it's transformative.
There's no better place to watch the sunset. The way the light plays on the city, it's like each rooftop and spire gets its moment in the sun's spotlight.
It's a symphony in golden hues. Just remember to bring a bottle of water and a good pair of shoes. those stairs can be a workout.
Now, heading down from the heavens and back to the earth, let's wander into the winding streets of the Plaka and Monastiraki neighborhoods. You can't help but feel the vibrancy and hear the pulse of Athens here.
Every corner tells a new story. Every souvenir shop is its own trove of treasures. And the characters you meet, remember that street musician with the lyre?
How could I forget? His music carried through the whole neighborhood, and it was like we were all entranced by the echoes of the past. Only in Athens could an ancient instrument feel right at home on a modern street corner.
Plaka, with its neoclassical charm, is often crowned as the neighborhood of the gods. But Monastiraki, it's like the mischievous cousin with its flea market and youthful energy.
You took the words right out of my mouth. One minute, you're haggling over a vintage postcard. The next, you're discovering an art installation in an abandoned building turned gallery.
It thrives on surprise. And while you're being charmed by the street vendors, let's not forget the aroma of Greek coffee in the air and the melodic chaos of everyday Athenian life.
Oh, the history and the stories those cobblestones must hold. Speaking of which, our next segment is going to dive into some weird facts about Athens, and trust me, there's no shortage of those.
Oh, I've got some oddities up my sleeve, Luca. From the peculiar to the downright bizarre, Athens has it all.
I can't wait to share. But that conversation, my dear friend and fellow travelers, will have to wait just a little bit longer.
So keep your ears peeled when we come back for some truly one-of-a-kind Athenian tales that you won't find in your average guidebook.
That's up next on Travel with Lara and Luca, the Athens Adventure.
And here we are, cruising into the quirky realm of Athenian trivia with our next segment, Weird Facts. Luca, you ready to dazzle our listeners with some of the strangest tidbits Athens has to offer?
Lara, I've got my flashlight of oddities turned on and ready to beam. Let's start with something that hoots in the night. Did you know Athens has an affectionate relationship with owls?
Right, the city's nocturnal symbol of wisdom. Seems like those wise guys have been moonlighting as Athens mascots for millennia.
Exactly. In ancient times, the owl was the companion of Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and of course the patroness of this illustrious city. But you know, I once read that they believed these feathered philosophers could actually ward off evil.
Modern-day Athens could use that charm, with all the tourists flocking to its historic sites. Speaking of looking over the city, have you heard about the guardians watching over the presidential mansion?
Ah, the Evzones, those soldiers with their high kicks, pom-pom shoes, and stoic expressions. Their traditional uniform must be the most flamboyant in the military world, don't you think?
Pom-poms aside, I've heard the pleats in their skirts have a special meaning, representing the 400 years under Ottoman rule.
That's dedication to historical detail. 400 pleats, 400 years. It makes me wonder if each pom-pom represents a thought they've had while standing perfectly still.
Let's not forget the caging of the guard. It's a choreographed spectacle of discipline and, frankly, patience. I half expect them to break into a musical anytime I watch.
Athens, the city where even the soldiers have a flair for theatrics. But moving from standing sentries to standing laws, have you ever stumbled across any peculiar Athenian rules?
You bet! Did you know it's illegal to wear high heels at ancient sites? They're all about preserving history down to even the footsteps.
Forget high heels. I want to see someone navigate cobblestones in those Evzone clogs. Now that would be a sight for sore eyes, or perhaps sore ankles.
And don't get me started on the coffee laws. Ancient lawmakers could never have predicted the modern-day Greek dedication to their brew.
Oh, the famous Greek coffee culture. Baristas are probably akin to modern philosophers, thinking groups huddled around tiny tables, sipping espressos and debating the meaning of life.
Or, in my case, debating whether I'll ever master making the perfect frothy iced frap. It's an art, a craft, and a little bit of a morning dance ritual with the shaker.
And the magic of Greek coffee isn't in its kick, but in the ritual, the slow burn of the sand, the careful pour. It's living history in a demitasse cup.
Couldn't have put it better myself. Now, enough about coffee and soldiers. What weird Athenian fact have you got up your sleeve, Luca?
Here's food for thought. The first recorded cookbook was written by an ancient Athenian. Goes to show Athenians have always been serious about their sustenance.
Imagine trying to cook a 2,000-year-old recipe. First, procure a pinch of salt from the market square. If the vendor haggles, threaten him with your chiton.
Or perhaps, for a delightful dessert, be sure to sweeten with honey, stolen from Mount Hymettus by the light of a full moon. Store-bought simply won't do.
A little culinary time travel with a side of poetic license. But speaking of time, do you know why Athens has no skyscrapers?
I wager it's so nothing competes with the magnificent Acropolis sticking out like Zeus's brow over the city.
Right on the drachma. The ancient gods mustn't be upstaged by mortals seeking the heavens in concrete and steel.
Looking to the skies seems to be a theme. Did you hear about the philosopher who died from laughter while watching a donkey eat his figs?
I suppose there's a moral there. Never choose figs over fun, or else you'll end up famous for the most bemusing demise.
A life lesson from the ancients. And to think, Athena herself planted the first olive tree, bestowing yet another gift upon this city of oddities.
From olive branches to figs, it seems like the Athenian diet is both delicious and deadly, at least if you're a philosopher with a donkey nearby.
Just another day in Athens. But let's not take pleasure in the peculiar plights of past philosophers. Shall we turn our gaze from these weird facts to the tales of triumph and tragedy in our next segment?
Indeed. Up next, we delve into the depths of history, unraveling the threads of time that have woven the tapestry of Athens. Come along as we embark on a chronological journey through the ages. Stay tuned.
Well, isn't it just astonishing, Lara, how wandering through Athens is almost like flipping through the pages of a history book?
Luca, it's the essence of the city. Imagine standing here in the 5th century BC. This place was the center of the world in what's fondly called the Golden Age of Athens.
The very cradle of democracy, philosophy, and the arts. People like Pericles, Socrates, and Plato all walked these streets. Can you picture the forums and dialogues held right under the shadows of the Acropolis?
Absolutely. Pericles' Athens set the bar high for generations to come. Don't you just love how their legacies still prompt us to debate and question, well, pretty much everything?
Speaking of debates, remember that story about Socrates and his student Plato at the Agora? A wine merchant accused Socrates of corrupting the youth, only for Socrates to dazzle him with his reasoning.
Socrates never missed a chance to question the status quo. But fast forward a bit and Athens experienced its share of ups and downs, especially as empires rose and fell.
Absolutely. You've got the Romans sweeping in, followed by the Byzantine era, each leaving their landmarks and stories behind. Did you know about Hadrian's library? Built by the Roman Emperor Hadrian, it's like he wanted to out-Athen the Athenians in their love for knowledge.
And then, much later, the Ottomans took over. Each culture layered onto the city's history like pages in a manuscript, adding their own unique character.
You know, Lara, I love that about Athens. The city doesn't hide its past. It boldly displays the succession of its historical chapters, like a palimpsest.
Couldn't have said it better. Now, the 19th century welcomed Greece's modern statehood, with Athens re-emerging into the light after so many centuries, breathing life back into its ancient bones.
The rebirth of a city. Athens became the capital again, didn't it? And it's been growing ever since, embracing both its ancient heritage and the drive towards the future.
Right you are, and isn't it fascinating to witness the blend of historical reverence and contemporary dynamism, old and new, coexisting in the hustle and bustle of the city?
Definitely. Which brings us to our modern era, where Athens hosted the first modern Olympic Games in 1896, right?
Yes, the Panathenaic Stadium was refurbished from ruins specifically for the occasion. A celebration of not just sports, but the city's enduring legacy.
History is a continuous dialogue here. It's as if the ancients still have a say in what the city becomes. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, Luca. It's not just about the ruins and relics. It's the echo of centuries past informing our present. It's what makes Athens truly timeless.
And that timeless charm is what travelers yearn to experience. I mean, this is the Athens that has watched the world change, has stood its ground, and keeps telling its tale to anyone who will listen.
To anyone willing to explore not only the well-trodden Acropolis, but the entire tapestry of the city's life story. It's about seeing Athens for what it was, what it is, and what it aspires to be.
So true. The Athens of yore has laid the groundwork for an Athens that continues to evolve and captivate visitors and locals alike.
And with a history as rich as this, the city is sure to offer a trove of tips to make the most of your trip.
That's a perfect segue into our next segment. How about we give those wanderers tuning in some expert travel tips for navigating this historical gem?
I think that's a great idea. We'll delve into the secrets to making your stay in Athens both spectacular and smooth.
So, stay tuned as we reveal how to dodge those tourist traps and maybe even find your hidden corner in the birthplace of Western civilization.
Exactly. Navigating Athens like a true expert is up next.
So here we are at the segment where we morph into those wise old owls of Athens and bestow upon you our most expert travel tips.
But fear not, dear listeners, these tips won't put you to sleep. Instead, they'll ensure you're wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to conquer Athens like a true travel god or goddess.
That's right, Lara. And let's kick things off with the golden question. When's the best time to visit Athens?
Ah, the age-old question. Now, if you fancy coming home with more than just memories, say a sunburn, you might be tempted to join the crowds in high summer. But may I suggest the lesser sweltering embrace of spring or fall?
Absolutely spot on. Not only do you get to skip the long queues under the blazing sun, but you can actually feel the breeze on top of the Acropolis rather than feeling like a melting ice cream.
Speaking of queues, how about we share that little trick you have for visiting the popular sites? You know, the one you absolutely swear by?
Ah, yes, my prized strategy. Go either right when they open or just before they close. You'll evade the hordes of tour groups and have a more serene experience with those ancient stones.
Now, on to maneuvering through the city. Luca, I think you have quite the tale about your first encounter with an Athenian bus?
Oh, Lara, you would bring that up. Listeners, picture this. A wide-eyed Luca, fresh off the plane, attempts to decipher the Greek bus schedule. The result? An unplanned tour of Athens, bus driver chuckles, and yes, eventually finding my destination 3 hours later.
Since then, Luca has become quite the aficionado of Athens's public transport. Care to share your wisdom, oh enlightened one?
Why, of course. For starters, get yourself a transport card. They're a lifesaver. Buses are great, but the metro is usually faster and has the added bonus of doubling as a mini museum with artifacts displayed at some stations.
They really don't waste any opportunity to remind you of the history here, do they? And I must add, sometimes the best Athens adventures are had on foot. Remember our impromptu discovery tour, Luca?
Ah, how could I forget? Wandering without a destination in Athens can lead you to stumble upon the most delightful little squares and cafes. Follow the cobblestones where they lead you.
And lead you to some fascinating encounters. Like that time we ended up playing a game of backgammon with a local poet who gave us life advice. Remember?
He was quite the philosopher. But you know what's not philosophical, Lara? Navigating Athens' cultural nuances. There's an art to it, isn't there?
Indeed. A simple kalimera, that's good morning for our non-Greek speaking friends, goes a long way. Respect is key in Greece. It's a country where tradition is held close to the heart.
And please, please, dear travelers, remember the sacredness of the siesta. Midday quiet time is observed by many. And trust us, you don't want to be that tourist who disrupts the peace.
We've seen some displeased faces, haven't we? On a lighter note, tipping isn't expected to be as grand as in some other countries, but it's appreciated. A sign you've enjoyed your time and their hospitality.
Speaking of hospitality, let's not forget one last crucial tip. When invited to a Greek home, never go empty-handed. A little sweet something can open more than just doors. It opens hearts.
I think that's the perfect sweet note to wrap up our travel tips, Luca. But don't think we're done with you yet. Oh no, we're just getting started.
Indeed we are. Next up will be your intrepid guides beyond Athens, steering you toward dazzling day trips and side excursions.
Be ready to cast off from the Athenian shores and set sail with us to islands unknown, or at least undervisited.
So, make sure you've got your sea legs ready, or car legs. Either way, we'll be venturing into exciting territories.
Grab your maps and sunglasses, listeners. It's going to be quite the ride.
You won't want to miss it. And just when you thought we'd covered all the Athenian delights, welcome to segment 8, where we whisk you away from the city's bustling streets and venture into side excursions that are literally the stuff of legends.
It's like opening a treasure chest of culture, history, and breathtaking landscapes all within a stone's throw from Athens. First up, let's set sail to the Saronic Gulf. Hydra, anyone?
Oh, Hydra, the motor vehicle-free oasis. Can we just talk about how refreshing it is to step onto an island where the only traffic jam involves donkeys?
So very refreshing. Just picture this. Cobblestone streets, majestic stone mansions, the sea lapping at the harbor with no car horns.
And every corner is a postcard waiting to be sent. The art scene is buzzing too. Did you check out those galleries when we last visited?
I did, and speaking of buzzing, Hydra's got a sophisticated nightlife. Nothing says vacation mode like sipping a cocktail and watching the world sail by. Literally.
Perfect for anyone looking to escape the city's fast pace. All right, next island on our triptych of escapes, Aegina. Famous for?
Pistachios.
The best pistachios. But that's not all. You're also stepping into a slice of mythological history. The Temple of Aphaia. It's like the lesser-known cousin to the Parthenon, but no less grand.
A triangular temple tour, the Parthenon, Sunion, and then Aphaia. We also can't overlook the fact that Aegina is a nirvana for beach lovers.
A dip in the sea after some archaeological exploration. Is there a better way to cool off?
Not in my book, but we've talked islands. What about a journey through time to, let's say, Delphi?
Ah, the navel of the world. You know, I always feel a particular kind of stillness wash over me when I walk in the shadow of the Temple of Apollo.
Delphi is transcendence embodied ancient sight, the mountain air and the views. It's an all-encompassing sensory experience.
And imagine those oracles, eh? Foretelling the fates of individuals and cities.
To be a fly on the wall or an ancient stone during those consultations.
Or thankfully, not an oxen being sacrificed.
Always a silver lining with you, Luca. But now let's bring our listeners back towards the Peloponnese.
The Peloponnese, home to medieval castles, ancient ruins, and epic tales that stitch the fabric of Greek mythology.
It's a battleground, a place of kings, and if you're keen on the trail of Hercules, this is where you flex your muscles.
Right, every stone has a story. Mycenae, Epidaurus with that astonishing amphitheater.
Words linger in the air there. One word and you can hear it ripple through the entire theater. Astounding acoustics.
And after all that history hopping, let's guide our listeners closer to Athens, towards the Athenian Riviera. That's a beach day, sorted.
The Riviera gives you a hug of coastal chic, beach clubs, breezy seafront promenades, and that glorious Athenian sun.
Various shades of blue and green waters. Lounging here is almost compulsory if you're within reach of Athens.
It feels like those islands gave us a breath of full-spirit adventure, and then the Riviera gently nudges us back to urbanity, with just a sprinkle of sand between our toes.
From the profound oracle at Delphi to the dramatic performances of ancient Epidaurus and the waves caressing the shores of the Riviera, Athens' side excursions are myths made real.
They remind us that Athens isn't just a city, it's a central heartbeat connected to a body of culture so vast.
It echoes through time and invites you to wander through epochs in just one visit.
And with those echoes still resounding, we're nearing the end of our side excursions. But don't go wandering too far.
Because in our next segment, we'll be winding down our Athenian journey with some final thoughts to carry with you, like keepsakes from an unforgettable adventure.
And just like that, we've journeyed through the streets, flavors, and history of one of the world's most fascinating cities, Athens.
Talk about a whirlwind tour, Lara. I felt like we were time travelers, hopping from the present to the past and back again.
We've covered some pretty iconic sites today, Luca. Do you have a favorite among the giants of history we walked among?
You know, the Parthenon is always a classic, but the National Garden really stole my heart this time. There's something magical about finding tranquility in the heart of such a bustling city.
For me, it has to be the treasures we unearthed in the historic Plaka neighborhood. It feels like every cobblestone there has a story to tell.
Let's not forget the delectable dishes we discussed. I mean, can we have a recount on the best street food? Those savory flavors are calling my name.
Oh, I stand by the mighty Souvlaki, but I wouldn't say no to a hearty plate of Moussaka either.
From mythology to the modern day, we've painted our listeners a portrait of Athens, vibrant with color and life.
Speaking of vibrant, those weird facts sure added some quirky brushstrokes. The owl legend still has me looking over my shoulder for signs of good fortune.
Right? And those Evzones guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier with their unique footwear. I'll never look at pom-poms the same way again.
History really came alive, didn't it? As we traced the city's transformation through centuries of glory, subjugation, and resurgence.
And throughout our tales, we tried to sprinkle in nifty travel tips and cultural tidbits, information as valuable as the coins once spent on the ancient agora.
Which brings us to the all-important question for our listeners. When are you planning your own Athenian adventure? Just remember, spring and fall, you'll get the best of all.
Words to travel by, Lara. But let's not pack up our bags just yet. There's more city to explore outside of Athens.
Yes. I'm dreaming of those side excursions already. I'm all for island hopping to Hydra, a painter's dream.
And for me, it's a day trip to Delphi to divine my future from the navel of the ancient world. Don't forget the sunscreen for that Athenian Riviera, Lara.
Trust me, I never do. I prefer to come back from vacations with souvenirs, not sunburns.
As we draw this adventure to a close, I've got to admit, I've had a blast sharing my love for Athens with you and our listeners.
Likewise, and I hope our listeners feel as though they've been sitting at a cozy taverna table with us, chatting about the marvels of this timeless city.
To those of you who've been nodding along and laughing with us, thank you for spending this time on your day to travel with Lara and me.
We hope we've left you with as many cherished mental snapshots of Athens as a camera full of postcards.
And maybe even inspired your next great adventure.
So until next time, keep your passports handy and your curiosity alive.
And join us as we set off to another destination filled with mystery, history, and stories to uncover.
Next week, we'll dive into the enchanting world beneath the waves of the Mediterranean, a snorkeler's dream.
A deep blue discussion for another day. But for now, from the both of us here at Travel with Lara and Luca, safe travels until we meet again.